Hey everybody, Dr. Justin Dunaway here, lead faculty with the Institute of Clinical Excellence, and today on Clinical Tuesday, I would like to talk about how our exercise prescription can have an effect on patients' mindset, and then how that mindset can subsequently affect patients' physical activity levels. But first, before we dive into that, if you want to come see me live, I'll be teaching our Total Spine Thrust Manipulation course July 11th and 12th in beautiful Santa Barbara, California. I think we've got 3 or 4 slots left for that course, so I can't imagine that those aren't going to fill up soon. So if you're interested in getting out there, seeing some sun, getting on the coast, come check me out, be at ptonice.com. And our 12th cohort, I can't believe it's that many so already, 12th cohort of persistent pain management. Next round begins July 6th. 8-week online course. So again, if you're interested, go ahead to ptonice.com to check those out. But today I want to talk about, again, exercise prescription and its effect on mindset. Stumbled on this really beautiful study, hot off the presses from Zahart and Crum. Let me pop up the screenshot of that real quick, called Effects of Physical Activity and Recommendations on Mindset, Behavior, and Perceived Health. Short read, I'll throw a link to it in the show notes here, but really, really interesting study, and it kind of challenges some of my held beliefs, but it's really cool how it panned out. But first, we have a really real thing that we have to recognize, and it's that the physical activity levels of humans in this country is abysmal, right? There's some reports that would say that up to 11% of our healthcare costs are due to physical activity or our lack of meeting recommended guidelines. Looking at some stats from the CDC, in 2018, the 25% of Americans reported doing no physical activity whatsoever. None, zero, zilch, not doing anything. Super sedentary. And on the flip side of that coin, only 24% of people in the country meet the recommended guidelines for aerobic and strength conditioning. 24% of American guidelines meet the minimum recommended requirements for physical activity. And as of 2018, those recommendations are what? They're 150 minutes of moderate cardiovascular activity, or 75 minutes of vigorous cardiovascular activity, or some combination of both per week, plus 2 days of strength training. That's it. That's the bottom line. And that's news of 2018. Prior to that, the recommendation was just 150 minutes of cardiovascular activity of some sort per week. That's it. And only 24% of Americans meet those guidelines. And if we look at that over the last 10 years, from 2008 to 2018, there has been very, very, very small change in that. In 10 years ago, it was 18%, and we've moved 6 percentage points in a decade up to 24%. That's abysmal. We have to, as a society, do better. I know all the ICE faculty have been on here recently preaching that fitness forward approach, preaching the idea that getting into these guidelines, getting humans moving, being more healthy creates a resiliency that's so protective against so much, but we're just not doing it, right? So what's going on there? There's tons of reasons why those numbers are so poor. But there's a piece of it that can be explained by mindset and how we prescribe physical activity. Oh, one more stat before I dive into the study. When we look at, so that's adults. When we look at adolescents, again, only 26% of children, only 26% of adolescents meet their recommended stuff. And for adolescents, it's 60 minutes a day of cardiovascular stuff and 3 strength days per week. But still, 26% of adolescents and 24% of adults are hitting the target numbers, the minimum requirements for general health. So what's going on there? Well, this study from Crum and Zahart, and if you guys, you know me, I'm always on here preaching about beliefs and expectations and mindsets, and this will be etched on my tombstone. Beliefs and expectations, the foundation that outcomes are built on, all day long. If you want to dive down a really interesting rabbit hole, hop onto PubMed and do a lit search for Zahart, for Crum, for Langer, and you'll see all kinds of really cool, powerful studies that show mindset drives so much stuff. And what they wanted to look at in this study, right? Effects of physical activity recommendations on mindset, behavior, and perceived health. They are talking about this concept of activity adequacy mindsets. Activity adequacy mindsets. And basically, when we think about an activity, we apply two judgments to it. One, is that activity adequate or not? Am I doing enough to have a benefit, or am I not doing enough? And then we look at the activity and we apply a positive or a negative. Is this a thing that's beneficial to me, or is this a thing that's harmful to me? And then that combination of ratings or whatever is our activity adequacy mindset. So we know that mindsets drive outcomes, and I've been on here a couple times talking about a few different studies. A couple of my favorites are the Langer study. I think it's Crum and Langer that looked at hospitality workers that worked. And I'm not going to dive into the details, but they looked at maids, and they basically gave them two sets of education. Some got the benign education, some got the ones that said, hey, listen, your job is physical activity and it makes you healthier, and these are all the cool things that happen when you do physical activity. And then they went back and remeasured everybody, and the people that got that education had absolutely nothing in their lives changed, but their blood pressure went down, their BMI went down, their waist to hip ratio went down, their blood pressure went down compared to the other group. So just believing that I was doing something physically active had massive benefits for my physiologic system with nothing else changed. And then one of the most powerful studies is by I believe it's by Crum or is it Hart, one of the two of them. But they pulled a bunch of information out of a database, looked at older adults, tracked them for 21 years, matched them for comorbidities, matched them for age, matched them for activity levels, and just said, hey, do you think you're exercising more or less than your peers? And then they compared the two groups. The people that felt they were exercising more than their peers compared to the people that felt that they were exercising less than their peers. And if you believed, all things being equal, I'm doing the same amount of stuff, but if I believed that I was doing less than my peers, I was 71% more likely to die over the next 20 years. That's incredible. Everything else is equal. Beliefs and expectations are so powerful. Mindset is so important. We have to understand our patient's mindset, but we also have to understand what creates their mindsets or what adjusts their mindsets. And this study is one of the things that looked at it. And this is such a cool study. So what they did in this 2020 study, Zahart and Crum, is they took people and they said, what we want to know is, does exercise prescription change mindset, change that that activity adequacy mindset? Do the way that we prescribe exercise shift their beliefs in how much they're doing and if it's harmful or not? And does that shift then change the amount of physical activity they're actually going to do? Does it change adherence? Does it make them do more? Does it make them do less? Really interesting study. So what they did is they split people into two groups, and you either got what they called the low exercise prescription with a liberal definition of exercise. And all that meant was we went off the old guidelines, right? So you were told that to be healthy, you had to perform physical activity for 150 minutes a week, every week. And physical activity, so that was the guideline, the low guideline, just 150 minutes of activity. Doesn't have to be vigorous, no strength training, whatever, just 150 minutes. And then the liberal definition of what exercise is. And it could really be anything. It could be going for a jog, it could be going for a swim, it could be playing some sports, it could be doing some yard work, it could be walking the dog, it could be walking around the block drinking some coffee. Who cares? Doesn't matter as long as you're moving, right? So low prescription and liberal definition compared to the high prescription and stringent definition. High prescription was you got to hit 150 minutes of moderate cardiovascular activity or 75 minutes of vigorous cardiovascular activity or some combination of both, in addition to 2 strength training days per week. And exercise is defined as going running, swimming, playing an intense sport, doing in weightlifting, strength training, things in the gym, that kind of stuff. But they left out the leisure stuff, the walking the dog, the going for a jog, the doing yard work, the job stuff. So they had a very strict definition of exercise and a higher prescription level. And then what they did is they sent everybody home, and then they brought them back in a week, and they measured they measured what their mindset was, and they measured the effects that it had down the road. Right? So what I mean by that is and they compared the two. So what they found is this. the low and liberal group, the people that the exercise prescription was less intense and the definition of what exercise was a little bit more broad, was a little bit more encompassing, had a little bit more wiggle room. Those patients had a more adaptive mindset. They liked what they were doing. They enjoyed stuff more, and they were willing to change their beliefs a little bit. And that more adaptive mindset was predictive 1 week later of higher self-efficacy scores. And what's even cooler is that those higher self-efficacy scores predicted a higher physical activity at that 1 week mark. So the patients, or the subjects that we gave them a smaller exercise requirement and a more liberal definition of what exercise was, were far more likely to do physical activity than the people that we gave the high and stringent, the high recommendation and the stringent definition of. And the coolest part of the whole study is this: not only do they have more self-efficacy, not only were they doing more physical activity a week because of that higher self-efficacy, but they also had higher perceived health than the people that we gave the high recommendations and the stringent definition of exercise to. That might not sound like much, but that's huge, right? Because again, one of the things that we struggle with is people adhering to exercise prescriptions. Very few people are doing it. People who aren't doing it also believe that their health is poor. When we look at the studies that look at mindset, perceived health predicts longevity. I want you to think about that. Perceived health predicts longevity. If we can find ways to get people to have increased self-efficacy, to do a little bit more physical activity, and to believe that they're healthy and doing the right stuff, they live longer than the people that don't. We have to start looking at this research and figuring out, how do we leverage this in the clinics? How do I use this information to get these positive benefits from my patient? So I want you to think about it like this. How we take this into the clinic looks like this, right? When we recommend exercise, what do? I think where this kind of challenged me is, you can't have a rote exercise prescription for everybody. This is your goal, and this is the same baseline goal I give to everybody. Because if the patient sees that goal as a really high-hanging fruit, it has the potential to lower self-efficacy, which is going to have the potential to decrease the amount of stuff they're doing, which is going to have the potential to have them think like they have worse personal health. So whatever we pick, it has to be a thing that the patient sees as reasonable, a thing that the patient sees that they can do, a thing that they're going to be successful at, that they enjoy, that isn't super stringent, because that's going to increase self-efficacy. That's going to get the patient to do more stuff. That's going to get the patient to believe they're healthier, and those health beliefs will make them healthier. So when we do this in the clinic, when I think about exercise prescription, I'm thinking about general exercise. And I'm definitely, I have a wide range of patients. I have high-end athletes and I have super sedentary people, and I'm not talking about the same stuff with them. We have to meet the patient where they are. John, who is in the 25% that does absolutely no physical activity, if I was like, dude, okay, you're doing nothing, I need you to hit 150 minutes a week. Even in this study, that was the low end. But for John, that's probably pretty high. That's not a good place to start. And he's probably not gonna get that self-efficacy boost. So I like to turn it on them. All right, John, we're going to talk about some of this stuff. And I frequently talk about some of these studies that show, if we look at somebody that does no physical activity and we compare them to somebody that's doing 150 minutes a week, those people that do 150 minutes a week have a 70% less chance of all-cause mortality, right? This stuff is huge. And I'll talk to patients about that. I'm like, all right, John, but 150 minutes might be a lot. What do you enjoy doing? Let's start there. Because exercise can be anything. That's what this study told us. Exercise can literally be anything. What would you enjoy doing that's just different than your normal day-to-day? And we start making a list. Let's pick a couple things from there. All right, John, that's cool. You'd like to go for a walk or walk the dog or do some yard work or whatever. Fantastic. John, if we were to start today, How many days a week do you think you'd be willing to do that? 2 or 3? Fine. That's a great place to start. How many minutes? How long are you going to do this each time? You haven't done anything in a long time, it's okay to start low. 15, 20 minutes? Wonderful. Let's start there. That's great. So if we're continuing this path, a month from now, John, where do you want to be? I want to put John in the driver's seat. I want him to start making some of the decisions. And I just want to guide him to make sure that his goals are attainable. So he doesn't set something that's way higher than, he doesn't bite off more than he can chew, because early on we have to have success. We have to have small goals. Even if it's not enough to really bump the physical health needle, what it's going to do is bump the self-efficacy needle. And it's going to bump the needle that makes me believe I'm doing the things I should be, and it's going to bump the needle that changes my perceived health. And when I get that bump in self-efficacy, it kind of opens the window for us to grade this a little bit more over time. But I want to put the ball in John's court. John, what do you want to do? John, how often do you think you're ready to start this? John, how long are we going to do each thing? John, in one month from now, what is this going to look like? And then how do we grade it from there? So, long story short, guys, ladies and gentlemen, humans, mindset is everything. Mindset is so powerful. Mindset is very predictive of physiologic changes in blood pressure, in general health, in body fat composition, in blood cholesterol, and all kinds of stuff. And it's predictive of longevity. Self-efficacy is predictive of people doing physical activity. If we can bump this stuff, if we can find ways to get even our most sedentary patients excited about even the smallest amounts of physical activity, it's going to crack the door. It's going to open the window. It's going to give us an opportunity to start moving these people in a more healthful direction. And if there is ever a time in the history of our planet that humans need to move in that direction, it's now. 25% of Americans are doing what they're supposed to be doing. We've got this major pandemic. Humans are stuck at home. It's time that we start doing this, but we have to make sure that we do it in a way that's not going to be overwhelming for the patient, that's going to meet the patient where they are, that's going to take their beliefs, their principles, the things that they're going to be excited about doing, and leveraging them to getting them to move better, move more, get more excited about movement. All right, I'm going to post a link to this study in the show notes. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the bar or shoot me an email. And hope to see you out on a course. Have a wonderful weekend, or today's Tuesday. Have a wonderful week, everybody.
Hey, thanks for tuning in to the PT on Ice Daily Show. If you enjoyed this content, head on over to iTunes and leave us a review. And be sure to check us out on Facebook and Instagram at the Institute of Clinical Excellence. If you're interested in getting plugged into more ICE content on a weekly basis while earning CEUs from home, check out our virtual ICE online mentorship program at ptonice.com. While you're there, sign up for our Hump Day Hustling newsletter for a free email every Wednesday morning with our top 5 research articles and social media posts that we think are worth reading. Head over to ptonice.com and scroll to the bottom of the page to sign up.